We're live. Mike Crawford, the Young Jerks. We got a big show tonight. She's already here. She's been here for a while. She's very prepared. Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission Chair Shannon O'Brien. I decided to start the show early because she's here right now. But before we bring her up, I wanted just to recognize all of the good things that are happening for workers right now. So many things. Lots of news stories. Boston Globe just did a story. Lorna McMurray. Mass COSHA. I want to give them a huge shout out. The Mass Council of Occupational Safety and Health, that nonprofit, they're doing great work. There was a rally this week with AFL-CIO, and Lorna McMurray's mom spoke. Danny Carson was there. We've got so much going on right now. I just want to tell the workers to keep doing what you're doing because it's definitely being noticed. We're also on the cover of The Nation magazine. That's just new too. So much is happening. I want to bring up our guest right now. This is another big thing. We got our award show coming up on Sunday. Like so much news we can be covering, but this is the number one story right now. Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commissioner, the chair, Shannon O'Brien, about to bring her up on the show. First time ever on our show. It's an honor to me to have her on the show. She was a state rep, I believe, maybe state senator. She was a legislator for a number of years in the Massachusetts State House, became the Massachusetts State Treasurer, and now she's our Cannabis Control Commissioner. She was the first one I noticed to really talk to us off the record, and then, publicly at a Cannabis Control Commission hearing about Lorna McMurray. I'm definitely, I hope people don't get mad at me tonight for being too much of a fanboy, because I know I'm supposed to ask the tough questions. We will ask questions. You're here too. You can weigh in and ask those tough questions. 978-560-3155. It's my honor. Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commissioner Chair Shannon O'Brien. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm really happy because you're here tonight.
Well, let the record reflect that I did reach out to you very early in my tenure because I have been on a listening tour. I've been trying to reach out to people who understand a broad range of issues that are, facing me in my new job. Some people know that briefly, I was a cannabis licensee, working on a cultivation or to set up a cultivation facility out in Western Mass. But my real background, is in regulation, is in, running, large complex organizations. I ran the Girl Scouts. You never mentioned that, obviously cannabis and cookies, although the Girl Scouts organization gets very upset if you infringe on their trademark. But cookies and cannabis in a number of different instances have gone together very well. So I appreciated the insights that you shared with me. And frankly, I'm assuming that some of the people listening in here today may have been some of the folks that I asked questions when I first started this position.
Awesome. Thank you. How many did you sell? A lot of Girl Scout cookies?
When I was a kid, I mean, that was when you used to be able to knock on doors, and that experience. I don't know how many cookies I sold, but it was good training for when I was both a state rep and a state senator, and would knock on thousands of doors in a campaign. But at the Patriots Trail Girl Scout, and now that that's merged with Eastern Mass, we sold $4 million worth of cookies in the first 4 months of the year. So I think the Thin Mints in March and April are the most popular cookie in the entire United States. So I sold a lot of cookies, not so much when I was an individual Girl Scout, but sold a lot more when I was the CEO of the Patriots Trail Girl Scout Council in Boston.
We always buy those cookies. I love them. Thin Mints, definitely. And yeah, so many good ones. S'mores.
I'm a Caramel Delight fan myself.
Oh, I love those too.
Yeah.
I'm like, give me 2 of every one you have there.
We once had we need to keep the issue at hand, but if you know Stacy's Pita Chips, and we awarded Stacy, one of the Women of the Year awards, and she was talking about healthy eating, and she said, I only learned today that an entire sleeve is not a portion size of Girl Scout cookies. So we had some fun with that. I thought it was too. So I had a lot of fun running the Girl Scouts, and frankly, and sort of to bring it back to cannabis, it was one of the experiences that I had that I think relates to my new job. One of the most important successes that I had when I was the CEO of the Patriots Trail Girl Scouts in Boston was focusing on girls in inner city, young girls of color, young girls living in, sort of neighborhoods that were underserved. And in the 3 years that I was there, we increased our membership in the so-called urban communities, Boston, Chelsea, Revere, Quincy, by 20%. And that was by reaching out to, we worked with Mayor Menino's administration, Michael Knieve, Robert Lewis Jr. At the Boston Center for Children and Families. And that's ultimately one of the things that really excited me when I was able to take on this job is how can we continue to improve, to reach out to those people who've been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, and how can we get into the neighborhoods and living rooms and classrooms and get a chance to talk to people to make sure that they're taking advantage of the benefit and the bounty of the cannabis industry.
I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of call. Maybe we already are getting calls. I'm not taking calls yet, folks, but we will be taking calls in a few minutes. 978-560-3155. Not yet. Good. Whoever was calling just heard that. Awesome.
Probably my sister, but anyway.
No. It's someone who's actually in the business. So
okay.
I want to take his call definitely in a second, but we'll definitely talk about the applicant issue and some of those other things. But I wanted to lead it with the worker issue because that's what we've been covering for so long. And Lorna McMurray, again, is on everyone's mind after the Mass COSHA put out their report naming TrueLeaf as the Dirty Dozen employer. Their national organization, their local organization did a rally in front of the State House. There seems like there's a lot going on still with TrueLeaf. What do you think about this whole worker health issue, and what is the Cannabis Control Commission doing about it?
Sure. And first of all, again, I and my fellow commissioners and the entire commission staff, we certainly continue to express our deepest condolences to Lorna McMurray's family, which may not know is Holyoke. That was my old state Senate district. So while I didn't know her family, I know a lot of her friends and neighbors, in that community. And, so that has a double impact on me, making sure that, my old district, has the protections that we can provide through the Cannabis Control Commission. Now, I want to be very cautious, and I think this, and I think you've heard this from spokespersons before. It is difficult for me to talk specifically about this investigation because it continues, and this is one of the frustrations that I have, Mike. I've always been an advocate. I've always been someone who, tries to make change. And, that I continue to play that role as a commissioner, but I'm also an adjudicator. So this is where the sort of sensitivity comes about me sort of getting too much in depth, in detail with the ongoing investigation. But what I can say is that this has been, a significant priority for the members of our, investigative and licensing team. One of the things that I did was make sure that we reached out. Frankly, I reached out to Marty Walsh, the former labor commissioner, because this is an important issue in Massachusetts. As most people know, the Cannabis Commission sets standards that the licensees are supposed to live up to in terms of workplace environment and safety. But the problem is we're not the enforcers of those rules. That is OSHA. And one of the good things that has happened is that the Cannabis Commission and OSHA and frankly the Department of Public Health have signed agreements to work together, are sharing even confidential information, again, which I can't repeat because that's part of the agreement working with OSHA. But the reason that I called, former Labor Secretary Marty Walsh is I wanted to say, this is an important issue here in Massachusetts. We appreciate having the opportunity to work with OSHA to investigate this, to make sure that we're getting the right information. But I said to him, this is a national issue, whether it's farm workers out in California, or other, folks working either in cultivation or manufacturing, we need to make sure that we understand, is there in truth, a heightened risk for cannabis dust? Is it just like regular dust? That has to be investigated, but we need to put in place, systems and controls. And so from the commission's part, and you and I have, off the record talked about this, but a couple of different things. One, I think that we need to be beefing up our responsible vendor training. I absolutely think that we require licensees to have whistleblower policies, but how are they communicated? You can have a written policy, but are you actually teaching that to your employees? As a matter of fact, when I was a state senator back in the 1990s, Senator Paul White and I passed one of the first whistleblower laws in Massachusetts. And so, this is near and dear to my heart, but how do we communicate it? Because if you're a 19-year-old young person, and you're working, in the cannabis industry, that $19 an hour job, it's not that easy for you to just walk out. And so maybe blowing the whistle might be scary. So I think we need to improve that training for all employees. We need to make sure that we as a commission are making those communications into the commission as seamless as possible and as responsive as possible. So either our investigators can go in and investigate, and or in conjunction with OSHA, make sure that they're going in to do their job. So it's a lot of layers, and it's going to require a lot of work. But frankly, I really applaud the work that you've done, Mike, to highlight this issue, and frankly, to light a fire under us, to make sure that we're really focusing on it, because it's important to me. It's important to my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Roy, has been, she's the one who reads all of the details, probably better than yours truly does, but make sure that those policies include whistleblower and workplace safety. So there's a lot going on. We're not where I'd like to be, but I think we're making progress.
There's the national, I actually shouldn't even call it the national, because I'm not even sure what the acronyms are, but I believe NIOSH. There's an organization called NIOSH that is like OSHA, but instead of enforcement, they're more of the scientific study of workplace issues. And MassCosh has been talking about bringing NIOSH into some of the big agricultural dispensaries in Massachusetts. Is that something that the Cannabis Control Commission could kind of help, like get them working here too? Because I feel like OSHA, only has limited resources, and what we need is really that investigation that you mentioned, like the science of like what's actually going on.
Right. And I think that there were some, I heard things wrong when the initial finding made it sound like they were going to allow Trulieve to do some scientific findings. And I spoke with some folks in Washington, in the Labor Department, and they said, no, that's not what's happening.
That's NIOSH, right?
Yeah. So I do think that there does need to be more research here, because there are many different things, that could be at play here. And we want to make sure that we have the right science, because if we can pinpoint exactly what happened here, but also look at the science for other people, we can provide greater protections and mandate greater protections in workplace safety. So I do think that we need to do that. That's what I've been trying to do in this role. I can't get down into the statute and the granular regulations. And frankly, I don't know as much as probably most of the people who are watching this, this broadcast tonight. But what I do is I bring people together. I bring people and resources and people together to try to make solutions. So I'd be happy to continue that dialogue with those folks and see what additional connections do we need to make to get some progress.
I think that's amazing, because we had a couple of meetings with MassCosh, and they were suggesting the NIOSH. And then we found out Trulieve was we couldn't figure out how that happened. And now we're finding out it was you talking to them. You were talking to the feds, it seems like, right? And they
I will say former Secretary Marty Walsh was very responsive. Obviously, he's a Massachusetts guy, so he reads these headlines as much as anybody, even though he was down in DC, and so he has raised this issue. Again, I don't know. I will give credit to our team in Massachusetts, and frankly, the local people in OSHA here for setting a lot of that up. But I guess from my perspective, we've got to sort of hash out this problem, or this case in Holyoke, and make sure that the investigation can run its course. But this is bigger than just the incident in Holyoke. It's across the country. And so what can and should OSHA be doing to research this safety issue, to make sure that workers all across the country working in the cannabis industry are protected in the workplace?
I'm always wondering if the Cannabis Control Commission can't even say to some of these industry players, because we've noticed like Holistic Industries had a big time mold problem. And it, from my understanding, it was there longer than they say it was. But regardless whether that's true or not, at a certain point, they owned up to it and they're trying to fix the issue, which I think is great. Like, I feel like there's a lot of places like that we know, because we hear from the employees, are full of mold.
And one of the things I'm going to, this is a little bit of a curveball, but it's sort of on that. I had a conversation last week, and I've talked to him a couple of times. Ralph Sacramone, who is the director of the Alcohol and Beverage Control Commission. He directly reports to Treasurer Goldberg, who was my appointing authority. And I never had that when I was state treasurer. The Alcohol and Beverage Control Commission did not come under my purview, so it's not anything that I bring any particular expertise. But one of the things that the Alcohol and Beverage Control Commission does is they do regular trainings with licensees. And, they do 12. I mean, they obviously have significantly more, licensees that they oversee. But what he said to me is when they began implementing those trainings where they could answer questions and maybe, proactively help licensees grapple with questions, they actually saw their violations go down by 50%. And so our folks on the investigations team are strapped. They are going all across the state. They're doing in-person investigations. They're tracking things down. They're researching. There's so much that they have to do. And frankly, I don't think we have enough people in those roles. And I'm hoping that we can continue to hire and bring more people into that. But I do think that, and I have said this, previously, I've spoken in a number of different groups. I spoke to Dave O'Brien's, business group on a couple of occasions. And to quote, Sean Collins, our executive director, I believe that our folks should be carrying a notepad and not a badge. And we need to be helping licensees live within the law. We need to be encouraging people to self-report because, making sure that if you do self-report, that is looked upon favorably. So I just want to make sure that when our investigators are going out, we're helping licensees solve their problems and not just coming down on them for violations. So I think taking a little bit of a different tact and approach and maybe implementing some new training sessions will make our investigators able to focus on the real infractions that they need to go after, and keep our workplaces safer and allow our licensees to do their business in a legal and safe way.
We got a phone call. I love that answer because that's what I was going for. Like, I would love to see more cooperation. So it's like they fix it themselves, and I think you were really good at this, Shannon. You think a lot about this. We have a phone call. Let's take the phone call. This is from a friend of mine, Ed D'Souza, I believe. Is this you, Ed? What's up?
Good evening, Mr. Crawford.
Hello. You're on live.
Good evening. Good evening.
With the Cannabis chair.
Hey, Ed.
Yes, I am.
Turn it up. I gotta figure out how to turn it up here. I'm not really good at this stuff. Trying to hear if I can. Okay.
Let me know if you guys can hear me.
I can hear you now. Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, Madam Chairwoman, Commissioner O'Brien, thank you very much for taking the call. Mike, thank you very much for facilitating this. As Mike said, my name's Ed D'Souza. I am the owner of River Run Gardens, a micro business in Massachusetts for cultivation only. I was actually going to be the first micro business in the state, but was held up due to some prohibitionists in my municipality. I just first want to start off and say that I appreciate everything that you, the rest of the commission, and all the employees at the Cannabis Control Commission, what they do. I know my personal investigator, Mr. Dan Huber, has been wonderful for me. I feel he's totally overworked, which you had just stated. I know you started off saying that when you first came aboard, you had a kind of a listening exercise. I would love to get some time with you, not to inflate my ego here, but I have done a lot for the regulations in this state, the small businesses, the workers, what Mike is helping out right now. And I feel that due to the connections I have more of a ear to the ground than a lot of other people. And I don't hold punches. I don't hide things. And you talk about being over-reporting, you can ask Mr. Huber. He probably regrets my emails because I let him know if my employees are, leaving or they're getting bonuses or this and that. the meat of what I wanted to call about is some of the issues that small businesses like mine are facing with right now.
Mhm.
And I understand that you cannot put a magic wand in the air and correct all the problems. So I'm not going to take all of your time.
Mhm.
But as a small business, self-funded, own all of the business, it's very hard to operate out here. We see a staggering drop in the wholesale prices. We see other license types doing things that we were told only cultivators and manufacturers would be able to do, such as pre-rolls, white labeling, and making money off of that stuff. But the biggest thing that we have a problem with, nobody pays us. And we have no recourse of obtaining the value for the product that has been shipped to stores, sold, money floated, goes way past terms, and ultimately we're left with the choice to go to small claims court, spend more in legal fees than what the invoice actually was, or we have to eat it. And again, as a small company where I've been operating for 3 years now, I will tell you in that 3 years, we probably made about $70,000 profit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we look at the state and having, you know, made over $2.2 billion in this industry. It's not coming from the small tier cultivators.
Right.
It's coming from the big guys, the retail, but that's business. I understand that. The hard part is this is a problem that has plagued Oregon, has plagued California, has plagued other states that they've actually gone in and made regulations that there are no terms. It's COD. And it's a matter of, you know, you are not small claims court. You're not business court. You are here to make sure a product is going out safe for the consumers in this state. But it's the small operators who are staying true to our workers. And in fact, in my company, work is a dirty word. We're teammates. I feel that a lot of people look at me badly because I started the trend in paying people well beyond the $12, $15 an hour to work. We offer profit sharing as a small family-owned business. As a matter of fact, my director of operations started off as a cultivator. We just offered him a 5% stake in the company.
Wow, that's great.
So, you know, where the small operators are, we're keeping the integrity here. We're not remediating product, which I have been complaining about for the last 3 years. We're making sure that, you know, we put in checks and balances so that bad product doesn't go out. Employees, team members aren't breathing in these molecules because the over-dried, remediated product going into their lungs. Even using with respirators will go through your lungs. Anyway, I don't want to dominate the show. I appreciate the time. I would love to be able to sit with you for 15 minutes sometime. Mike.
Ed, what town are you in? Ed, what town are you in?
Newburyport.
Newburyport. Okay.
Newburyport.
I haven't been up there yet, so maybe I can put that in. And I, you know, one of the things again, you know, part of the listing, and I can't, you know, there are 500 licensees, so I can't go to every single one. But all of the commissioners, Camargo, Concepcion, Stebbins, Roy, they all do. You know, a lot of visits. As a matter of fact, I won't say which commissioner, but I got a phone call from somebody saying, "Hey, Commissioner so-and-so, they said they're going to come visit the licensee. Is everything okay?" I go, "Oh, it's good news. They just want to meet him and say hello." And, you know, so all the commissioners are looking to kind of have their, as you say, have their ear to the ground and kind of hear what's going on. So, Ed, you know, I'd be happy to take a trot up to Newburyport. I think that's where my old friend Lisa Mead was the mayor for a few years. So I'd love to. I haven't been up there in a while, so I'd love to do that.
Absolutely. I'll say I was one of my proudest things. You walk into my facility and you'll see that I had pretty much every member of the Massachusetts Joint Commission on Cannabis, from Sonia Chang Diaz to Diana Zaglio to, you know, everybody visit my facility. I'm an open book. I love to show how, you know, if you have the passion, a small 5,000 square foot facility can actually make it work. So thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Ed.
Have a wonderful night.
You too.
Thank you, Ed D'Souza. River Run Gardens up in Newburyport, Massachusetts. I know all the restaurants up there. I used to be a waiter up there.
As I said, Mayor Lisa Mead was my buddy up there. So I used to go up there quite a bit, go to the Chamber of Commerce up there.
Yeah, it's fun. Newburyport's great. And Ed is a great guy. So I love that call. Thank you, Ed, for calling. If we, if anyone else wants to call on 978-560-3155, there are some other things that I know that you wanted to talk about tonight, Chair Shannon O'Brien. I mean, like there's an equity fund now. I think that's something of interest to talk about. Do you have thoughts on the way that's rolling out right now?
Yeah, we're 5 years in, and the ideal situation, because the biggest issue that all cannabis applicants and licensees and businesses face is capital. And having been, I guess I call myself an unsuccessful cannabis entrepreneur, trying to raise that money. I was a well-connected white woman, okay, and trying to raise money, for a cultivation facility was a challenge. And so, it's particularly difficult, for persons, who may have been, arrested and convicted, in the legacy market, or Black and brown and other, minority, entrepreneurs who'd like to get into the system with federal, prohibition. You can't just go to a bank. If you were a really good baker and you made the most awesomest chocolate chip cookies and maybe you got $100,000 from your friends and family, you'd go down to the local bank and say, I'm really good. Here's my business plan. I know that I can make this work. That's not an option for people. And so, larger, businesses, multi-state operators, were able to come in here early. And we have a mission to support equity applicants and to, redress the problems of the war on drugs. And so I think that after 5 years, one of the words that a couple of words that I like to use, kindness. I think that we need to make sure that, whether it's, with the stakeholders that we're dealing with, making sure that we act with kindness inside the team that we work that way. But impact is the other word that I like to use. And I want to make sure, I think that we've done a great job running a number of programs, providing sort of business training and education, whether you're on the licensure track or, maybe an ancillary service. But right now, 5 years in, that door is closing. It's closing for a lot of people. As Ed mentioned, the price of cannabis is going down. I know that when we were putting together, our business plan, it was $4,000 a pound. Now it's, a lot less than that. So anyway, making sure that we have impact. So one of the things that I've been doing, again, connecting people and ideas and resources, I've been talking to the folks at the new social equity fund, and they're, and it's going to take a while. If that fund were in place 5 years ago, maybe we would have had a little bit more success. Of 800, 900 people who've gone through the social equity program, less than 50, have gotten their commence operations. So I think we need to be very mindful right now of how we take a look at those, that cohort of people. There right now are approximately 400 persons, in that cohort who have provisional licenses. I think we need to target our train our eye on those, persons that have been able to demonstrate they've been able to get a provisional license, but, they're not moving forward. How do we take the social equity fund and make sure that it goes to, those entrepreneurs who can spend it well and make things work? How can we retool any of our training and programs to help those people get the sort of skills they need? But I've been doing some other work on the outside. I've been talking to, there's a highly regarded group called Get Connected. And some of the, people involved in that, a woman named Colette Phillips, former Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Murphy, who was a friend of mine, Jay Gonzalez, who ran for governor a few years back. And so what Get Connected does is they focus on providing grants, $10,000 grants for Black and brown entrepreneurs. And they provide them with free legal advice. So my thinking is, and then there's another group, Betty Francisco works also, with entrepreneurs of color. So how do we, leverage some of those resources out there that help small entrepreneurs, maybe helping them with a small grant, maybe helping them with getting free legal advice to kind of move to that next level, and then connect them with, both our training at the Cannabis Control Commission, and then, how do we coordinate with the Social Equity Fund? So I'm actually meeting with a couple of folks who sit on that new fund as advisors. I've been talking to the folks in the Economic Affairs Secretariat. Sean Collins actually did a great tutorial, both for the staff in the Economic Affairs Office, because they give away grants all the time, loans and grants, but they really don't know this industry. And he also did a tutorial for the new the new advisory group to just make sure that they understand, sort of some of the things that could impact how they distribute those funds. It's going to take a while though. And there were a couple of people who were on the call saying, I'm ready to get my money. You don't give away money, the state's money, that quickly and that easily. So there's going to be a ramp up time, but we at the commission are trying to do what we can to coordinate and collaborate with them to leverage additional resources for, those entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs, and make sure that we have impact. My personal goal, this isn't the rest of my commissioners, but we have approximately, 50 social equity, economic empowerment, commence operation. My goal is within 18 months, 20 to 25 people who actually get to commence operation. And I don't know if that's a doable goal. I hope it is. It should be. But that's what I think we need to do. Set real goals, not just running people through programs, but how do we get them to licensure? And if it's not licensure, I also had some communication with the head of Bunker Hill Community College. We were talking, and a mutual friend of ours, Mike, is an organic, cannabis farmer. And what he tells me is, I don't really grow good weed. I know how to enrich soil that ends up making good weed. Well, that good soil could not only grow good weed, it could grow really expensive strawberries, or it maybe could allow someone to be, an organic, run an organic lawn business. So maybe even partnering with some of those community colleges to train people in those skills that could leverage, their opportunity to work in the cannabis industry, or maybe work outside of the cannabis industry, but take advantage of the support that the Cannabis Commission provides to them to be able to find some economic empowerment for them and their families.
We got another call. Do you want to? Let's take the call. See who's on the phone.
Doing whatever. I'm just talking until you tell me to stop.
Yeah, we're ready. Who's on the? Can you hear us? Who's on the phone?
Yes, I can. David Rubinovitz.
Hey, David, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Mike. And Commissioner, I think this is I applaud you for appearing on the show and actually taking calls where you don't know what people are going to ask you. I think some of your comments about like the social equity fund and trying to get more people licensed, there's, I think, another thing to take a look at, and that's how difficult it is to get through the licensing process. Things like, and I'll give you a great example. Very few of the people I've run into actually write their own SOPs. So they immediately turn to an attorney, and that costs them like 10 grand. If anybody who I serve on a town board, and I'm going through the state ethics training process right now, online program, it goes through everything about the law. I don't understand why the commission couldn't take a similar approach, and instead of saying you got to provide us with the SOPs, hire a company to put together an online training program that goes through all the regulations. And then once they pass that course, they have the SOPs.
Yeah.
Because when the operators are turning to an attorney or an advisor or a consultant to write the SOPs, doesn't do any good for anybody other than the person who's getting paid to put the SOPs together. It's not like the operators know those SOPs inside out and completely understand the regulations. You're paying 10 grand to somebody to put it together for them. And for those who are going through the state social equity fund, they're going to be using state funds to pay people about 10 grand, and you're not getting the outcome you want. And I think there's just an easier way to do that could cut out of the cost.
Can I tell you, David, I agree with you. And this is one of the things that when, we're asking people to put together SOPs and different, I don't always, I'm not always in sync, with my fellow commissioners on this issue, but I hate creativity, because creativity costs money. We want to make sure that we have, responses that fit the business, that fit the community, that business is serving. But there's a certain, level of, sameness that goes in most of these, policies and procedures. So I actually agree with you. And that's one of the things that, I'm thinking that, we could be working on with one of these outside groups is, can they work to maybe provide some templates and some models? I mean, I know when I was going through this myself, I'm a recovering attorney. Okay. And when I remembered when I was an attorney, you never wrote anything from scratch. You always had something. I worked in a large law firm. You always had some sort of a library of documents that you could take and, and improve upon. I believe that there is some of that training, for people within the programs that we have. But I do think that we could better systematize this to make it easier. Again, reducing those barriers to entry, I think, is important for all of our applicants, but in particular for our social equity applicants. So, I'm in agreement with you on that, David. And, there's sort of a lot of different fields we could be hitting to, but that is one of the things that I would like to see is how do we lower the barriers to both entry, but also compliance without not without compromising health or safety. So I appreciate the comment.
Cool. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, David. We're the Young Jerks. We're with Chairwoman Shannon O'Brien, the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission Chair. I got a couple questions for you too. Like, I guess maybe speed round questions. Like, one of them.
You think I'm going to answer in one word?
Well, I know. No, not that speed round, but like I know we're starting to run out of time. I know you haven't eaten today, or
I did. I ate a really fat donut, so that's about it.
Oh, we had a Mass State Senator come on recently. He has a bill that he wants, Michael Moore. And I should say, if I'm going to mention Michael Moore, I just found out he's coming to our party on Sunday night too. Our Young Jurks Cannabis Workers Awards, which we're looking forward to. So I definitely want to throw that plug in there if we're going to bring him up. But the reason we brought him up is because he has a bill that would have an audit. It would set up an audit for the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission. And I'm sure you're aware of that. And I'm just wondering like where you stand on that.
Sure. And Mike Moore is an old and dear friend. When I ran for treasurer in 1998 and when I ran for governor in 2002, I think he was one of my regional coordinators. So I've known Mike a long time. He's a good friend. I understand his frustration. And this is one of the issues that I've been working on, again, to sort of reduce the internal red tape to make sure that we're getting answers more quickly and not to get into that particular investigation, because I don't like to get into the individual cases that sort of launched sort of his motivated him to do this. But in that particular case, that was another instance where we had MDAR, the agriculture people, who do some of the testing, and our people, and we actually worked quite nicely with them to make sure that we had closed the gap, to make sure that we were getting answers faster for people. So, so I understood his frustration, and I definitely understood the frustration of the licensees. But that being said, it basically it's having an auditor or that would be embedded in the Cannabis Commission. And obviously there have been, a number of headlines, whether it was the Lorna Murray, incident, and the commissioners had not been informed of that. Again, I say that one of the reasons that the commissioners were not informed is because we're adjudicators and you don't always run to the judge to, give them the evidence before the case is brought. But we thought all of the commissioners felt that this was so serious that even if, this, created an opportunity to overrule, to appeal our decision to, a court, we felt that was a serious enough incident that we all should have been informed. So we agreed with that. There has been, the editorial in the Boston Globe, about a number of different issues, whether it was the mistaken release of some data, about individual agents. So we've hit some bumps in the road, and I'm frustrated too. I mean, I've been here since September. I'm still learning the job, but I'm still trying to get my arms around, one, how do we best deploy our public resources? I think we need to be putting more money into our, into our inspections, in our licensure, so that we can make these things happen more quickly. We need to be collaborating more closely with our sister organizations like OSHA, like, MDAR. So, I support Mike in his concern about the cannabis industry. He was rightly frustrated. I get it. But my job as the chair since September is to make sure that I'm working on that internally to make that bill unnecessary. That's what I'm trying to do.
There you go. And as a follow-up on that, on Mike Moore, he says he's coming to our Young Jerks Awards show, a Cannabis Workers Awards show that we're doing on Sunday night. You're also nominated for. I'm wondering if you're going to be there. Yeah, I'm asking a lot for you now.
You are asking a lot, and let me tell you, I would join you, except the young Devin O'Brien from East Hampton High School has the romantic lead in a play. So I will be in my hometown enjoying my niece, who is, she has been an actress since she was 2. Unfortunately, I have a prior commitment that I have to go to.
And what play is that? What play is she? Do you know?
I can picture it. Once Upon a Mattress.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
She's the lead. She's the lead. Congratulations to her.
She's the romantic lead, as she likes to tell me, because there are several leads. Yes.
She's the romantic lead. We have another call. Let's maybe we're taking our chances today because we've had so far 2 great calls. Let's take this off mute. Please have a great third call. Let's do it a great third call to end the show, maybe. Who's the caller right now?
Hi, Mike. This is Commissioner Kim Roy. How are you tonight?
Oh, wow. This is a really good call. Well,
now I'm scared. Now I'm scared.
I got 2 members of the Control Commission.
Can you, Mike, can you do that thing like we used to have on Laugh-In and unplug her?
Yes, and we're not violating open meeting law because it's just 2 of us. But Mike, I'm calling just to thank you for inviting the chair on and thank you for your platform and your advocacy. And I know how much work you have done around workplace safety and worker safety. And we hear you. We hear stakeholders, and what a fighter and advocate we have in Chair O'Brien. Along with our fellow commissioners, we are trying to make this. We're trying to improve on this industry. We're at over 5 years now in adult use. We're at an inflection point. Like the chair said, she just came on in September. But we are working every day to make this a more robust, more inclusive, more equitable, safer industry for all. And, I listened to quite a bit of Chair O'Brien, and I just applaud her because she is tireless and working on behalf of not only of the workers, of the thousands and thousands of registered agents, but the licensees and those who are trying to get in the industry, because we know there are barriers to entry. So I'm just calling to say thank you, Mike. Thank you for your platform, and thank you for having the chair on tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, Kimberly Roy, Cannabis Control Commissioner. That's first-time caller. I love first-time callers, and then when you tell me it's
a first-time
you,
caller.
I was really excited. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So
thank you, Madam Commissioner.
Great job. Great job. Thank you all.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Have a good night.
Yeah, Commissioner Roy is Charlie Baker's appointee, and had worked in the Worcester Sheriff's Department. And one of the great things that she has done is work with Commissioner Stebbins. They put together a curriculum for the Registry of Motor Vehicles, and it was a little bit controversial. Some people were saying, this is like too much like DARE, and frankly, one of the things that they don't get credit for is actually what they took out of the video to make sure that this was something that, one, promotes public safety for young people in our streets, but also make sure that they didn't overly politicize or attack the industry. And so I was really proud of the work that Commissioner Stebbins and Roy did, not only to, I think, create, something that will be important, for kids, taking driver's ed, but also making sure that industry was not villainized in that process. So they did a really good job making sure that that stuff was edited. So I was pleased at what they did.
Awesome. And I agree with her statements too about you, Chair Commissioner Shannon O'Brien.
Oh, you're nice to say that. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's just,
and I don't even mind, as I told you, Mike, when I came off, I don't even mind getting yelled at, Commissioner Roy.
I could yell at you.
Yeah, Commissioner Roy ran for state Senate, and Commissioner Stebbins ran for, he was, I think, I can't remember if it was Springfield School Committee or City Council, and Commissioner Concepcion ran for City Council. And so in Boston. So all of us, and I don't think Commissioner Camargo has worked on political campaigns for Deval Patrick, but when you've been in that political realm, you kind of get used to people yelling at you, and not that you like being yelled at, but it's really important to kind of make yourself available to people. And so this is one of the things before, we came on, this is one of the things that all of the commissioners, all of them have been saying, we want to get back live. We've seen, we're now all in the same room, and it's not just behind a screen, but we do want the public to be able to come. We've had to work, it's been 3 years, and honestly, we can see the public discourse right now, and we can see sometimes, that there's, there are some different flashpoints that have created, some safety risk. So we're, working with our staff to make sure that we're open to the public. The public will be invited in to our hearings, but we're working, with our public safety officials to make sure that we have crowd control and make sure, but, that's our role as public. We need to be in the building. We need to be answering the phones. We need to be getting back quickly, answering questions. And then the commissioners themselves need to be accessible and answerable to the public. And, that's what we're getting paid for. And that's what we should be doing.
Do you know when that's going to be
The
expected
next
to
meeting,
happen?
May 11th.
So they'll be in person. Will there also still be like Zoom? Like, can people still watch?
Yes.
At home?
Yeah. No, they're
Hybrid?
obviously, there are persons,
Disability.
telemedicine is here
like
to
me.
stay, public access via Zoom or Teams is here to stay. And one of the other things that we're still working on, but this is going to happen, we will have we're going to have a second meeting a month. So we will have our regular meeting, but what we hope to do, and this is, Commissioner Roy was kidding, but I've never been subject to the open meeting law before, really. When I was a state rep, the legislature is exempt from that. When I was state treasurer, we basically were working in our team. I didn't have to collaborate with any colleagues down at the pension fund because investing pension funds is considered proprietary. We are able to sort of talk offline. And so we were not subject to open meeting. But what that means is basically only two commissioners can kind of have a conversation about public policy. If I talk to Commissioner Roy, I can't then have the same conversation with Commissioner Concepcion, because then that's three, and then that's a quorum, and then we're violating the open meeting law. So we're hoping that this extra meeting, which may be remote, just to sort of save on the wear and tear for the staff, at least initially, where we can actually talk about things. One of the things that we hope to raise is the issue of social consumption. That's something that we're working on. We have 3 groups right now responding to the Chapter 180 that was passed by the legislature last August, looking at host community agreements, looking at social consumption. And my group is looking at, how do we imbue equity into the host community granting process on the municipal level. So we're hoping that that second meeting allows us as commissioners to, in a legal setting, have conversations that we legally can't have. I mean, sometimes what did I say? Commissioner Concepcion is on my writing group for social equity. She's also on the host community agreement with Commissioner Roy. So here she is, and she's got to sort of compartmentalize 2 different conversations. And we were in one of our hearings today, and she's like, I can't say that, and that's really frustrating. And that also hampers our ability to kind of collaborate and think about things. But that's the law.
Meetings.
That's what we have to abide by. So this second meeting will help us.
I like it. And I think it keeps people, more aware of what's going on too. We got another question that just came in. Larry writes, will the total THC calculation be standardized across the state so all labs report the same potency values? This has become a big issue. Like I know that there's been some things going on with the Cannabis Advisory Board on this. Do you know where this stands? I can't, Larry, I apologize that I can't specifically answer that question, but I will tell you that I'm going to be having a couple of meetings, with the independent testing labs in the next couple of weeks to kind of hear from them. We have a great team, at the Cannabis Control Commission. We understand the inconsistency in testing and what that means, both as a consumer issue, but also as a health issue. So we are, I have been asking, about, we've talked about the independent, testing standards lab. To set something like that could cost upwards of $5 million. So we've had some discussions about how we can promote, in essence, self-policing. Is there a secret shopper? And secret shopper is not the right way to call it, but, going in and testing and then publicizing and holding those standards out in a public setting, so we know which testing is going to be trustworthy. So we're still looking at that.
looking at the testing standards lab, which may or may not be in the cards immediately because of the expense, but how can we set better standards? And then also, how can we better police this issue? So we're going to be having those conversations. I am definitely not an expert in this topic, but I'm, going to be meeting and trying to get better acquainted. But Larry, this is something that we will be looking at in the regs. Hopefully we'll be coming up with some solutions or some suggestions in the not too distant future.
That was a question from YouTube, and now on Facebook, Ed D'Souza's saying testing reflects less than 0.0001% of the 15-pound legal batch because different parts of the same plant will test differently. Is his point? He also says there's another good comment I want to bring up. He said you need to also speak to the operators, not just the labs, which I think is a good point because they know all the games that are being played.
Yeah. No, I understand that. So this is something. This is actually something that Commissioner Roy is working on a great deal, and she and I are going to be tag teaming in a couple of different meetings. So she's deeper into this than I am, but I'm in the process of getting better equipped to understand what some of the solutions could be. So again, I hate not having an answer, but I don't want to give an answer if I don't have one that's solid and one that I can stand behind.
Another comment I want to bring up. This is a great comment from someone I really like and respect a lot. They're doing a lot of organizing around the worker issue. Danny Carson was a co-worker of Lorna McMurray.
Danny has reached out to me. Yes. So I've heard from Danny.
Danny has written, thank you for being a voice for the workers. Please don't let up. We need the commission to hold businesses accountable for their employers' health and safety. So Danny's.
I want to thank Danny. Danny wrote me a very nice note a couple months ago. I appreciated that. Again, Danny, working, obviously none of this stuff happens fast enough. But I think that we are, seeing some movement and trying to put in place some systems that we can, not only make employees safer, but the commission can work more efficiently to make that happen. So Danny, thanks for your work. Again, I'm sorry for your loss because I know that you were friends with Lorna. So anyway, thank you, Danny, for that comment.
And also Ed says, we are thankful you are willing to look into things. We watched for a long time. Our concerns were ignored. And that's the way I feel too. Like, it's like, I think on multiple issues here, I think anyone listening, I'm thankful for you, Shannon O'Brien.
This is not defensive, okay? And this is very hard because when you think about what this group did, okay, it's go, set, ready, right? The voters passed, the recreational cannabis, and then the legislature, made some significant changes and then said, go do it. It was literally in a matter of months that, and frankly, the original commissioners, Jen Flanagan, Britta, Cade, Shalene Title, and Commissioner Hoffman and Sean Collins, it was literally, they had to stand this industry up, with a dozen people. And so I liken it to, and people sort of talked about this, about the big dig, is that the big dig was happening in Boston, yet traffic kept flowing. And that's exactly here. They called it open heart surgery while the patient is awake. And so, we're 5 years in, and we've built this vehicle, and, maybe the headlight is over here, and, maybe the bumper is up on the roof. They put it together and it goes pretty well, but maybe we need to be making some of those adjustments. And this is the sort of 5-year inflection point. I've been an unsuccessful tech entrepreneur and an unsuccessful cannabis entrepreneur, both of which standing up, needing a lot of money and making things happen. But 5 years in tends to be that kind of point, in a startup company. 5 years in, everybody's working, you're all in the same room, and you're trying to stand up this business. And then you have to figure out what is maintenance. How do we sort of look at, we're not crazy. We're not just trying to get stuff done to meet crazy deadlines, but how do we look at where we are? How do we make it better? And that word that I used earlier, how do we have better impact with the resources that we do have? So it's not to say I think that people were ignored, but I think that sometimes we just got to put our head down and get this stuff done. And we may or may not have enough people to do it. And right now, what I'd like to do is make sure that the people and resources we have are going to those areas of our impact that mean the most and can help the most people and promote public safety and promote the industry. Because, by the way, one of the things we didn't talk about is, businesses closing. And we're going to have to, deal with that. I don't have an answer now, and we're sort of getting to the end of the hour. So and as I told you, I got to go drive back home.
You gotta
now.
go. You know what? That was exactly the last thing I was gonna ask even, but I wasn't planning on it. But it's glad you brought it up because we're looking at the numbers. They're losing billions. These companies, the largest companies, the cannabis industry is so expensive. Even the large publicly traded companies can't afford it. Long term, do you guys have plans on
No, we don't have long-term plans.
how are you going to address that shit?
No, but I think that there are some short-term things, and hopefully in the next couple of month or so we'll be able to announce, especially looking at the and again, I don't have any answer, but looking at the issue of certificate of good standing. You have some businesses that are behind on their taxes. I also think that this is a training issue because you kind of should be paying your taxes all along, and if you haven't been paying your taxes, it means that you haven't necessarily been managing things as tightly as you should. So maybe there's some training there, but I do think that we need to be trying to figure out ways, when a company doesn't have an opportunity to file bankruptcy, right? How do we help those businesses, that are sort of in extremis, but also what are those regulations that have been in place for 5 years, and I've said this to you, Mike, we are not regulating Ebola. We are regulating legal cannabis. So what should we be doing to streamline our regulations to make sure that we are reducing the burden on businesses? Someone suggested to me, and I think it's a great idea. We have to have our camera, you're supposed to keep your film, your footage, for 90 days.
The delivery.
Can we reduce that to 60 days? Could we maybe save a business on cloud storage cost a few grand a month? Maybe that could pay your taxes, maybe not, but it could help. Those are some of the things that we should be examining right now to reduce some of the overhead burden on businesses so that they can survive, and continue to thrive.
Thank you so much for being on tonight, Chair Shannon O'Brien. Last comment that I'm going to read from a Facebook user. They said, it's exciting that the new Cannabis Control Commission is opening to listening to the market. We appreciate you, Mike, for continuing to be an advocate and sharing your platform. I want to thank everyone for listening. The phone calls that we got tonight from Ed, I forgot a couple names already. Who else?
David,
called?
Ed, David, and Kim.
Thank you. See, I never got my paper out to write it down like I usually do. And Shannon O'Brien's on top of everything. You must have been a host at one point. I have a feeling.
I did. I used to on WHYN radio, Dan York. He was the sort of Howie Carr of the West. So every once in a while, either I or Brian Lees and I, the former state senator, we would host out on WHYN, and then I would get really yelled at. So this was much
awesome.
Better.
Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight and answering all the calls and the feedback from our listeners. This was great.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. That's Shannon O'Brien. We hope. And I guess the last question, will you come back on the show?
I will come back, and I look forward to hopefully making some additional progress that we can report when I come back.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Being
Thanks,
here
Mike.
tonight.
Appreciate it. Thanks to your listeners, viewers.
Awesome. That's Cannabis Control Commission Chair Shannon O'Brien, who spent almost an hour with us. That was actually 1 hour, exactly 1 hour. Great. And I just want to mention, a lot is going on right now in the Cannabis Control Commission, obviously, which we just discussed, but also on the worker safety front. There's been quite a few news stories. Boston Globe, Mass Live, WBUR just put out stories. There's also a front cover edition that is out right now from The Nation about Lorna McMurray. So there's a lot going on in the media related to worker safety. Mass Kosh and National Kosh. I just love these two groups. I want to thank them so much for what they're doing for the worker safety issue. And I also want to mention that we have our big event coming up this Sunday night at the Rockwell. It's the Young Jerks Cannabis Workers Awards. we're expecting a special night. I know that Danny Carson's going to be there with his wife. We're really looking forward to that, as well as Mass State Senator Michael Moore, it looks like, is also RSVP, and Ed D'Souza from River Run Gardens. And we're going to have a great night. I hope to see you all there. I'm really looking forward to this. I'll see you all hopefully Sunday night. If you need tickets, just hit us up and we'll send you the link. You can find it on social media too. We put it all out there. We hope to see everyone Sunday night. Young Jerks Cannabis Workers Awards, the Rockwell Somerville Davis Square, Somerville, Mass. I want to thank everyone tonight, the callers that we had, the instant feedback, and especially the commissioners, 2 commissioners, Kimberly Roy and Shannon O'Brien. That was great tonight. Really happy about it. And I know that we're going to have a bunch more shows upcoming in the next few weeks. So stick around. If you haven't liked us, followed us, subscribed to us, please do so wherever you're listening tonight. Facebook, YouTube. Make sure you're, coming back and checking us out on the next show. Young Jerks, we'll see you next time. Mike Crawford, thank you so much for listening and supporting the show.